Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome to SpaceWeek Live for Sunday, July 12th, 2020. China got off a couple rockets. There was actually an Israeli rocket that launched that I'll show you a bit later. SpaceX had a couple of delays with their Starlink-9, and for interesting reasons. I'm not sure what the details are, but they say they needed, and this is the second time, in fact, that this mission has been delayed for the reason of needing more time to do pre-launch checkouts. Now, I don't know what that means. There's, hypotheses floating around, ranging from they need to do more analysis on the booster because of the number of times it's been used to I'm not sure, but it seems unlikely to me that they have suddenly become poor at managing their time, like that they would not give themselves enough time to do the adequate checkouts prior to launch. So I'm not sure what need more time for checkouts means. Maybe there's something going on with the payload or a ground support, a ground equipment issue. But they don't generally give us these details, and so we have to speculate. So let's see here. So yes, Starlink-9 was supposed to go up on, well, it was supposed to go up yesterday, but it has been delayed until, let's see, have they put a date on it? They have not. So what they do when there's a delay or a scrub is they, well, depending on the mission, depending on the conditions, they can cycle after 24 hours, but this Starlink-9 mission has not followed that pattern. They've not been cycling on a 24-hour schedule. What they do is they scrub and they say, we'll let you know when there's another date. And I don't know why that is, because as far as range availability, the launch facility is not being, there aren't other launches it's contending with at this time coming from either Kennedy or Canaveral, which is 4 miles away. But who knows? Yeah, if it was the weather, I would figure they would say it was the weather. But yeah. Anyway, what we do have is 3 launches from elsewhere. We have 2 Chinese launches, which to my knowledge were not live streamed, but we do have video of them. And we have an Israeli launch, which is certainly not their first, but we don't hear too much about Israeli launches. Let me take a look at the chat here. Ship burn in Santiago. Everyone watched Space Kitten's premiere tonight. Tyler Rowland asks, will Starman get close to the sun and burn? No, not likely. Not anytime soon, certainly. So orbits, we understand orbital mechanics quite well. And we can predict orbits out to many centuries. Beyond that, it gets tricky primarily because of the influence of Jupiter. So what Jupiter does is it exerts a little tug, even from such a great distance, on orbiting objects, and it can, over time, alter their orbits in such a way that they end up getting affected by other bodies, such as Mars or Earth or Venus, and over the course of centuries or millennia, the orbit can become unstable or more irregular, and so it becomes difficult to predict where things are going to be, where small orbiting objects are going to be in the very long term. Big objects, obviously it takes, planetary or stellar mass to affect the orbit of a planet, So we know how the planets will be orbiting in 1,000 years, whereas a satellite can be tugged around by various gravitational sources. So the last I heard, and this was 2.5 years ago, the last I heard, there was a 6% chance that in the next 1 million years, Starman may impact Earth, Venus, or the Sun. I'm not sure how it would reach the Sun because its angular momentum would, the Sun is hard to get to unless you're coming in at a very steep angle, like a long period comet. But basically, unless Jupiter plays shenanigans with Starman's orbit, it's going to be orbiting the Sun essentially forever. Let's see. So I do apologize for the rough start this episode. I was not adequately prepared. I take full responsibility, because there are no consequences. Oh gosh. Raji Kasas is saying the H-2A rocket, that's the Japanese H-2A rocket, will launch together with the Falcon 9 within 4:10 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. on July 15th. Yeah, so I'll get to that in the upcoming launches section, so I'll address that shortly. Real Sven Gaming has a great question. When will the Starlink internet service start? That's a great question with no clear answer. Maybe someone knows better than me, but they're still in testing mode, despite the fact that Starlink is and has been the biggest satellite constellation in existence by far at this point. It's still in testing mode, so I've heard maybe later this year, but you know, this Starlink-9 launch keeps getting delayed, and rather than every 2 weeks or 3 weeks like they had planned on, you know, launching the Starlink satellites, we're looking at every, you know, month, sometimes every 3 weeks, sometimes 5-6 weeks. So they're not getting them up there as quickly as they had hoped, but obviously COVID has had something to do with that. It's, you know, affected everybody's work schedules, and the whole pipeline has been impacted. I mean, like, for example, the Guyana Space Center was shut down for what, 3-4 months, and then they you know, they tried to launch what was it, last week, a Vega rocket, but they scrubbed, and we haven't got a rescheduled date for that. But let me see here. Mark, I did shave. I had to get rid of the goatee. It was cool, but I couldn't keep it, so I had to get rid of it. I didn't shave very well though, because I'm kind of scruffy here. Maybe the camera doesn't pick it up so well. Actually, you know what? Let me reduce the the brightness is already set down. All right, good. Normally it defaults every time I start the webcam, it defaults to a high brightness, and I look like really blotchy because there's bright spots on my skin. It's a decent webcam, but the control software is pretty lame. All right. Maria Chris 68, aka Maria Kutajan, asks, there were 7 SN tests from Starship. What worked the most was the SN5. Does this mean that the SN5 pressure test will be used for future flights, although passing the test is ideal? So some of the failures with the Starship test articles, the SN fuel tanks, basically, some of those were tests to failure, so they experienced some unexpected failures, and so they did extra tests pushing the tanks to the limit, to gather data on the performance of the tank and the limits of their new, their new manufacturing process, their welding techniques, the whole shebang. As for when they feel that they will have done enough testing, that's a good question, and only time will tell. I don't think even they know. They have a plan, I'm sure, but development on rockets is a very fluid sort of process. I mean, it's not like writing a musical piece where you can, schedule 2 minutes per day of composition or whatever. You've got to test something, see what happens, react to it, design for it, or design around it, and move on to the next thing. So as far as Starship SN5 specifically, I don't have any particular knowledge there. Real Sven Gaming asks, what is a starhopper? So Grasshopper was the original Falcon prototype hopper rocket. It was the one they tested back in, what was it, 2014, 2012, somewhere thereabouts, that lifted off from the pad and elevated up to boosted itself up to a height, and then came back down and landed on the landing pad. That was Grasshopper. Starhopper is the equivalent for Starship, and they tested Starhopper last year with great success. It, with a single Raptor engine, lifted off, and this is a 80-foot tall water tower, basically. What is it, like 20 feet wide, 16 feet wide? I forget the dimensions. But sorry. Yeah, so you can find that video. Just search for Starhopper. You'll see a great show. It lifted off in a great cloud of dust, hovered at about 300 feet, was it? And then through gimbaling, maneuvered itself over to the landing pad and landed relatively softly. I think it did punch a hole in the landing pad, but that's maybe more a fault of the pad than the rocket. Okay, so let's take a look at the launches this week. All right. So this here was AppStar 6D, a Chinese satellite launched on a Long March 3B. No, I don't want Fortnite, please. Kill me now. Here you go. This is the X-Pace Kuaizhou-11. There we go. And so those were the two Chinese launches. China's been plodding right along with their space program and putting the rest of the world, giving us a run for our money, I guess one could say. And this here is an Israeli satellite. It's a SpySat launching on top a Shavit rocket, and the sound will be muted because there's a whole bunch of inspiring and surely copyrighted music that plays, and I just don't want to deal with that right now. So this is a Shavit rocket. That's all the sound effects you get, I'm sorry. And the telemetry CGI. All right, so that's pretty cool. Of course, Israel, the most awareness we've had of the Israeli space program was probably from last year when they tried to land the Bereshit lander on the moon, which didn't turn out so well. They got to the vicinity of the moon, and they in fact did land on the moon, but in a more violent fashion than they had planned on. But it was a great effort, and remember that was originally a Google X Prize, Lunar X Prize project that even after Google after the expiration for the Google Lunar X Prize expired, they Israel kept at it and finished their project anyway, which was admirable. So as far as SpaceX, again, Starlink-9 scrubbed due to or stood down due to needing more time for checkouts, which I would love to know specifically what that means. But looking ahead, and in 2 days, on July 14th, at a time that I will tell you shortly when I look at the schedule, a Falcon 9 will be launching the Anasis 2 satellite from Cape Canaveral. And interestingly, as shown here in their tweet, the booster for this mission is the same one that previously carried Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley up to the space station in their Crew Dragon a few weeks ago. So this was a very quick turnaround. In fact, I think this is a world record turnaround time for a, well, I guess it's sort of a loaded statistic, but it's a world record turnaround time for a booster that carried astronauts to, that carried astronauts, except currently SpaceX has the only reusable boosters, so maybe that statistic is a little weighted, but it's quick turnaround time in any case. So good on them for that, and that's coming up this July 14th. Let's take a look at the calendar. The SpaceX launch is actually the only one scheduled. Well, the only one showing up on next to launch. Let's put it that way. And it is on July 14th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. GMT. And that's, again, Falcon 9 with the Anasis 2 satellite up to geostationary orbit. Let's take a look at my calendar. Let me put the link for the calendar in the chat. So I try to update this calendar as often as I can. Nightbot's being a little sluggish. There we are. Copy link. There we go. The raw space calendar. All right, so oh yeah. So yeah, that's strange. So earlier, I forget who it was. Somebody mentioned the Japanese H-2A rocket with the that was launching on the same day as the Falcon 9. For some reason, that launch is not showing up, nor the Minotaur 4 launch are showing up on Next Rocket. So you have to look to multiple sources. You have to look. I mean, I usually go to nextrocket.space. I go to spaceflightnow.com. I go to nasa.gov. And even that's not, like, for example, Blue Origin. If they launch, that doesn't show up on anybody's radar because they usually do it short notice, and it's not the New Shepard is not an orbital class rocket, and so it doesn't get picked up by any of the launch websites. But anywho, so looking at my schedule, let's see if I can zoom in here. Okay. So Next Rocket said 5 p.m., but the information I have here is 4:25 p.m. Let me check. I don't want to give you incorrect times. The thing is, launch schedules, they change all the time. So the spaceflight now is saying 5 p.m. also. So let's go with 5 p.m. on the 14th for Falcon 9. And then, this is exciting, a Japanese H-2A rocket is going to launch just a short time later, or a few minutes before, depending, at 4:51 p.m. Eastern, 8:51 p.m. GMT on the 14th, with the Hope mission, the Hope Mars mission for the United Arab Emirates. It'll be launching from Tanegashima Space Center, Japan. And I actually don't know much about this. Oh, it's an orbiter. It's not a lander. But I actually don't know much more about it. But it will be headed for Mars. It's one of 3 missions slated to head to Mars this year. One from the UAE on a Japanese rocket, one from China, and I believe they do have a rover. And then, of course, the Mars 2020 Perseverance rover mission. The window for which, if anybody is curious, is between July 30th and August 15th to launch Mars 2020. So look forward to that. And then on Wednesday the 15th at 9 a.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. GMT, is a Minotaur 4 rocket carrying NROL 129 for the National Reconnaissance Office, aka Spy Satellite. And we actually do not know what orbit it is headed for because it's a spy satellite and they don't tell us these things. So, all right. So that's all the launches coming up for this week that I'm aware of. There could be some others that pop up, or the ones that are on the calendar could be scrubbed or delayed. This is normal, but do stay tuned, and hopefully we'll have some more stuff to look at in a few days. Snow Kittens is saying this may be the last Minotaur. We will see. Will be unofficial retired, so yeah, we don't hear much about the Minotaur rocket. It's a Northrop Grumman, isn't it? Yeah, it's Northrop Grumman rocket. All right, so that is it for this week. And does anyone have any more questions? Everyone make sure to watch Space Kittens premiere later today. Also, oh gosh, Comet Neowise. Yeah, Snow Kittens, thank you for reminding me. So two nights ago, or yesterday night, whatever, I stayed up all night, well, playing games, but then I stayed up until the morning with the hope of seeing the Neowise comet on the northeastern horizon before dawn. But unfortunately, at 4:20 a.m., um, most of the sky was crystal clear, but there was a bunch of there were clouds or haze to the northeast, which interfered with my view. And then by 5:30, freaking North Carolina, like the humidity had just jumped to like 100% or something, and the whole sky was just filled with this moist, gooey haze, and I could barely see any stars at all. So also my view to the northeast is blocked by a hill because of the terrain here, and a bunch of houses and trees. So yeah, have not gotten to see Neowise. It's early morning before dawn is a terrible, terrible time to try to view anything, because I'm either going to be super tired from having stayed up or super tired from having gotten up. So I'm not going to be very coherent regardless. So Raymond Rosas is asking, are there any space launching points in Great Britain? Now, that's an interesting question. There are no space centers in Britain, like when you think of Baikonur Cosmodrome or Kennedy Space Center or even the Guyana Space Center. But Britain has made their own rockets before, including the famous lipstick rocket that had a red tip to it. But I'm not aware of any. I mean, I could search, but anybody can Google. I'm not aware of any launch facilities because there's no active space program in Britain. Like there's no rocket companies. Now I believe that some British companies are maybe involved in manufacturing parts for rockets that are used maybe by Arianespace or whatever, but but there's no British rocket per se. Yes, the Black Arrow. But interesting question. Let's see. Black Arrow rocket. Let me just, you know what? I am curious now, so let me just say. Oops, if I could spell Great Britain. The Sutherland Spaceport is a proposal for the first spaceport in the United Kingdom. It's planned to be located within the Melness Crofting Estate on the Amwan Peninsula in Sutherland, Caithness and Sutherland, Highland, Scotland. Oh, so this is a northern... Oh, wow. Good heavens, that's very far north. Okay, so let me drag this over here. Yeah, it is way far to the north. They call it Sutherland, but it is Northerland. But yeah, so not currently a spaceport, but there are plans for one in the far north of Scotland. Scanning chat. Okay. Yeah, Snow Kitten says Virgin Orbit is going to launch from the UK. So Richard Branson is British, and he, of course, is the man behind Virgin everything. Virgin Orbit, Virgin Galactic, Virgin Atlantic, Virgin, etc. And so it makes sense that he would want to launch his... So this would be, yeah, but Virgin, they don't do launches from the ground, they do air launches, so they carry whether it's their little passenger craft or a satellite rocket for launching a satellite, they carry it up to altitude on a carrier craft, an airplane of their, well, the rocket launches from underneath like a 747. The crew craft launches from underneath their own proprietary aircraft. But Chris V asks, Falcon 9 won't compete with H2A, will it? So depending on the timing, we may have dueling live streams. I may need to stream both of them at the same time. But they're not in competition with each other for range availability, because one's launching from Japan and the other's launching from Florida. Roger C. mentions Orbex, Scotland. An aerospace company developing a small commercial orbital rocket called Prime, headquartered in Forez, Moray in the UK, subsidiaries in Denmark and Germany. Future launch complex proposed to be built on the Amwan, and I'm probably getting that pronunciation wrong. I don't even know what language that is. Gaelic, I guess, maybe? Peninsula in northern Scotland. For attention. Well, I mean, any Mars mission is a pretty big deal, so so the Falcon 9 webcast may have some competition. Fortunately for SpaceX, that's not their it's not their primary metric for success is live stream views. All right, so that'll wrap it up for this week. Thank you all for coming. Sorry about the rough start. I will try to do better next week. Thank you for the questions, keeping me on my toes, and looking forward to a successful Anasis 2 super secret launch, as well as a successful Minotaur super secret launch, and hopefully the Emirates Mars mission gets off the ground okay. Those are always high stakes. I mean, there's really no love lost for spy satellites, and communication satellites are well insured, but scientific payloads are precious, and when they're lost, it's always a great tragedy. So let's fingers crossed for hope. And thank you all once again for coming. And until next time, keep it raw and have a great week.